also want to bring in Katherine Schweit. She's a former senior FBI official and an active shooter expert. Katherine, as I said, you're an expert on how police should have responded. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, said they could have saved lives. What should we understand about the enormity of the failure here?
I think that is the best word about it. It is an enormity. It's astonishing to see, even though it's not surprising, the glaring disregard for best practices by the law enforcement who responded. And if you read the numbers and the details, you find out that law enforcement looked for more than a dozen. They gave more than a dozen excuses why they didn't go through that door when standard protocol that they trained in themselves 2 months before. They hosted a training 2 months before this shooting, law enforcement did, and they still found a dozen or more excuses, looking for keys or looking for ballistic shields. And then in the end, they went in anyway, and they didn't get injured, but they let those people die in there, and it's unforgivable.
And Katherine, this nearly 600-page report singled out the former school police chief, the former city police chief, and the current sheriff. What should accountability look like for them and perhaps for others?
Yeah, others here and also elsewhere. I think every police chief, mayor, and school district head should be sleeping with this book underneath their pillow and looking at the details of what's in it and what they didn't do, because it's a very, very number of people who are working now who let this happen. I don't think they should be at the helm anymore. They clearly didn't have any foresight to protect those children. And there are laws around that, I'm sure the DA is I'm a former prosecutor, considering whether or not the child protection laws for the state were violated. And that's probably part of what the challenge is right now.
Shimon, on that specific point, and you've been doing amazing reporting on this story ever since day one. Why hasn't the district attorney pursued any criminal charges yet? And will this report from the U.S. Justice Department change things?
I mean, it could change things because it gives the voice that the families here feel that they have not had. They have now the Attorney General of the United States here today, standing before them to the world, saying what happened here should not have happened, and this was a massive screw-up. If you ask the families, Wolf, they'll tell you they believe that the DA is trying to protect herself politically. She's trying to protect some of the officers that were involved here, because they can't understand why it's taking so long for her to make a decision. In her meetings with them, in private meetings, she has said that it's just taking a lot of time. She needs to gather more evidence. She needs to bring experts in. We have no indication. She's not spoken about any of this publicly. We have no indication if she's doing any of that. She keeps saying she's going to make a decision at some point. There's potentially going to be some grand jury that's going to hear some evidence, but it's really all a mystery because we just don't know. We have no insight, and she's really not given any information on what she's been doing. In fact, she's been preventing information from coming out. There's a lawsuit from media organizations requesting information, and she's fighting those. So it's not entirely clear what her end game here is going to be, but it's very, very frustrating for the families, Wolf.
Katherine, I want to play another little clip from our exclusive interview with the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Listen to this.
Look, there's so much that we still need to do and the Congress needs to do. An 18-year-old should not have a military-grade weapon that belongs on a battlefield, not in a classroom.
So, Katherine, how does law enforcement actually make sure an enormous failure like this never, ever happens again, especially when they're up against assault weapons?
What we saw here is that law enforcement had the right weapons to respond. The assault weapons are automatic weapons that we see being used in so many of these shootings. They're not the whole story, right? Handguns are part of the story too. But law enforcement has to be properly prepared. They have to have the equipment. So they have to have the equipment that they can beat, the same types of shooters.
Yeah, they got to do something to learn the lessons of this horrible disaster. Katherine Schweit, Shimon Prokupecz, to both of you, thank you very much for reporting, for joining us.